And we're on.
Today we're going to talk about compassion. What is compassion? Compassion is an active force. It's an aspect or a facet of love. It's only through compassion that we actually reach and find and experience a deeper sense of love. It's like a key, if you will, to unconditional love, which is ultimately that is what everybody wants. Nobody wants it to be conditional. Everybody wants to be unconditionally loved. And if they don't think so and they get it and really let it in, feel it, they know that's what they've been missing, their whole entire life. Um, but basically I think compassion is an art, and I think it's something that we need to cultivate within ourselves, each other, and definitely our young. We definitely need to, if we want to change the world and make it a better place and learn how to work within this ever-changing environment, then we need to teach our young to cultivate a much deeper sense of compassion. We're going to need that, I think, so that we can continue to work together to figure out all the problems I think that are going to arise, as they often do. Um, so
Do you think do you
that's
think psychopaths lack compassion?
it appears that way. I think that's actually like one of the biggest problems I think in our culture is that we've let people with what we would term, extreme narcissistic into, if you imagine like a spectrum of extreme narcissism into psychopathy, that I think that when we allow these kind of people in positions of power and influence, it really messes things up for everybody else. They're insatiable. And it appears that they lack, either they lack the ability to empathize with people completely, or it's just so atrophied, that part of their brain, that they just don't feel it. And it's sort of like, you can't really get mad about it. It's sort of like a predator. Like a lion's a beautiful creature, when hunting, so on and so forth. It does what's in its nature. And a psychopath does what's in their nature. They're a layover from our genetic past. They're excellent within war and all that kind of stuff, because they don't care. All they care about is winning, and they will keep wanting to win no matter what until they die. There's an insatiable aspect all throughout history of many of the people that became our leaders that I would say would probably test out within that what we consider to be like an extreme narcissist or a psychopath. And a lot of us, I don't think all of them were always born that way, but when we don't, they need extra care. We can identify these traits in the brain around 3 years old now with an fMRI. And I think that we need to find out ways to help these people so that they can exist in the world and feel really the whole breadth of the human experience. These kind of people have like a limited emotional range compared to most people. So they might look like a human, act like human, talk, so on and so forth, but but they're lacking humanity.
Do
And
you think
that's a real problem.
do you think suffering can help these types of people to develop more compassion?
Um, I think for most people, yes, but a psychopath, no. I mean, at least that's not what the data would convey, because they lack empathy. Lots of people suffer in vain. They suffer and they get really angry, or they shut down, and they don't learn from their suffering. And they should learn to be more compassionate, whether it's toward themselves, others, everything. Nature, the environment. This is
Mhm.
the way to having a more loving and creative and playful existence within the human species on this planet, is only
Do you,
through
do you
compassion.
think do you think suffering is an important part, an integral aspect to develop empathy and compassion?
To some degree, I think that we should try to, whenever we start to suffer, we should really try to penetrate into that as quickly as possible so that we don't wallow in our suffering, you know,
Mhm.
that we also condition our mind to suffer less, basically, to be more in the moment, to approach situations that are difficult or people or even ourselves with from a point of compassion. I think that's extremely important. Um, it's not going to, shame and guilt and all these things are not going to really do us any good. To hold on to them, we know when we do something that's wrong, we figure that out and we move on. We don't need to shame ourselves about it or anything of that nature. We don't need to suffer needlessly. No one needs to get their arms chopped off to understand what it might be like, to take a moment to imagine what it must be like to live with no arms, that kind of thing. It's not the best analogy, but we need to listen to people that have suffered and that are living in ways that are that for most of us might think are impossible, and they're getting through it and enjoying life, obviously with the help of other people as well. you know
I think
we
I think suffering is important for humans because it has a way of cracking open the shell of our ego and
Yes,
making us more empathetic and
yes,
understanding of
hopefully
other
compassionate.
people. Yes,
Hmm.
hopefully compassionate, but more understanding of other people's
Yeah,
pain and suffering.
I think that we're at that point, we're still in that point of evolution where, you know because of our lack of knowingness of absolute truth, who and what we really are underneath what we have built up underneath all the stories and the narratives, of the smallness of what we think we are. um, that will help to enlighten people in a way to suffer less, as the hopefully, in the far future probably, but as things unfold, most of the suffering is brought upon ourselves, by us. We are at the root of most of it. Obviously, if somebody, whatever, captured in some country, tortures you, things like that, you are repressed or suppressed. That to agree, there is a certain degree where physically it's out of your hands. And even that, if you really want to get into it, you can really pierce into that and let go. But that's not, for most people, aren't going to be able to endure, a certain suffering that's beyond a certain threshold. It just becomes unnecessary,
Would you
and it hurts
say
people.
would you say that most people lack compassion these days?
No, I just think it's like a muscle, and most people are compassionate or have the capacity for compassion, but it's unfortunately very weak. I think when it comes outside of themselves or their personal friend group or their children or whatever else, that we need to broaden that compassion. And we also, in the West, we really need to make ourselves aware of what it's like for everyone else. For instance, we have all these cheap goods and plenty of everything, but that's only a result of having like people work for slave wages and stuff, basically. you know and that's not good. That is discompassionate. It's not because, but it's not on purpose. We just don't really know. Most people don't really think that deeply into things, really understand what's happening with other people, so we take everything we have for granted. And that really makes us very blind to the suffering of others. It's completely unavoidable. I mean, or completely avoidable. So we all need
Yeah.
to practice a deeper sense of compassion. Awareness go hand in hand. So we need to, first and foremost, make ourselves aware, of what's going on internally and also externally within our environment, and not close ourselves off to, the suffering of others. To go into it and really like try to understand what's going on with other people, whether they're people you know or don't know or everywhere. And also to realize too that it's just, at some point, if you absolve yourself of judgment, you know, and you open your heart up to compassion, then you're going to be a little lighter. There's a little sadness there, maybe, I think, as well sometimes. Um, but you're also not going to have that weight of judgment upon your shoulders that's going to inhibit you from being compassionate, because everybody wants it. Everybody wants compassion. None of us are perfect, you know.
Do you think lack of compassion is directly related to strong ego identity, like
Yes.
egocentrism?
Yeah. Yeah, but there are people that still, it's like they compartmentalize, they shut it on and off, which I don't think is healthy. Ideally Jung, Carl Jung, he was wanting us to be more whole. And this is also what yoga is about, you know, in that way, to unify the body, mind, and soul, all the aspects of our consciousness. A lot of people, well, can be very compassionate towards their children, family, and friends, but then completely discompassionate towards everyone else, you know.
Yes,
And
like
that's, not good. Like people that are very like racist or things like that, they're tribalistic. I mean, these are layovers from our past, but we never needed to be this way, we chose to predate upon each other. That never had to happen. That was our choice, and we're suffering because of that. We're still suffering for it now in a very highly competitive or culture that breeds I should say that breeds this scarcity mindset of fear, because that's wonderful for capitalism. It sells things.